Stem cells is gift from the universe because we are gifts. Humans cannot create cells. Something that's much more competent than us created the cells. And the cells, really, both you and I came from a single cell. So in that cell contains the DNA that really contains the coding of the secret for healing and for regeneration. This is why I consider stem cell therapy not just a regular medical treatment. I think it's a spiritual act.
I love a story that you shared on another podcast talking about you were young, you were giving your mom a massage, and you started to feel the transmission of energy through you into your mom and your intention for her healing. And I think that's so important because I think in strictly Western medicine, it's about addressing symptoms and the deeper issue of having hope, even connecting to something greater that can aid and assist the cells of our body to start to heal and really communicate with our bodies in that loving and intentional way, and how that shifts outcomes in healing. And you at such a young age started to feel that energy. And it's really a driving force. You're such a true healer in wanting to use stem cell therapy to help people. And I'd love for you to share how you found stem cell therapy and why this is so important for us today.
Yeah, I was as blind as most doctors these days. That was 9 years ago. I had no idea. I was, on my holistic medicine journey, vitamins, good diet and supplements and maybe some energy, some, PMF, a few different things. But I had no idea that people were actually utilizing stem cells. To me, because that did not come into my, field of vision, so I didn't know existed. So the first doctor I met who said, I've been doing stem cell therapy. I've used this on a kid with autism. I said, what? You're using stem cells? You're actually using stem cells to put in a person's body? And I said, I thought they're still doing research. He said, no, umbilical cord derived stem cells. And I put in this kid body. He has autism and there are all these improvements. So he pulled up his phone and showed me all these things that the teachers wrote down. And so he got this long list of 40 different changes the teacher noticed. The teacher had no idea the kid got stem cell therapy. So to me, that was mind-boggling because I was a psychiatrist. At the time, I was studying for a board certification for addiction medicine. So I was a psychiatrist that have seen so much of autism, and I decided that there's no way I would put myself in that place to deal with autistic kids because I saw all the tools I had were not effective. I said, this is about the most depressing thing I can go into, which is to try to throw drugs at these autistic kids. If that's all I could do, I would rather not do that. I would rather treat schizophrenic patients. I felt like I was actually going to be making a bigger difference. Bipolar disorder patients, depression, all those I felt like I had better ways of actually making a difference. The autistic kids, not so much. So we sedated them and we try to stimulate them to make them focus a little better. But fundamentally, they're not relating better. They're not focusing. I mean, they're focusing maybe slightly, but they're not really accomplishing things. They're, as far as their function, their ability to play with other kids, all those are very, very limited. They were doing some behavioral therapy. Maybe there's some mild improvements, but all the medications that we gave as psychiatrists really were not addressing what the problem was. So then to see what this doctor, he's an anesthesiologist. Okay. And I was like, what do you know about autism? But you just put these cells into this kid's body and the cells did all this? Because I sign me up, but I need to learn what this is. So my thing is, the moment I know, that's it. If it's been shown to me, I cannot pretend that I never knew, right? So I've got to find out what is going on, because if I don't engage in that curiosity, I'm just fooling myself. Then I'm being dishonest. So I have to be really honest that somebody has found a way to help these kids. And why did that help? Why all these medications I learned all these years were not helpful? So he didn't really do much. He just did an IV infusion, and that was all improvements. So, okay, let me understand how the cells could do that. What kind of cells are they in the first place? So I went down the rabbit hole. I wanted to know what kind of cells they were, how they were processed, and the different cell types, and what is he using, and why were the cells able to produce these profound changes? So that's kind of the beginning of it.
And how did that lead you to now treating people at Chara Health and Chara Biologics with stem cell therapy and seeing results? How did you actually start doing this and create your clinic?
I think I was hooked by successes. So the first one, I had no idea if I was going to be able to help this gentleman. He was 69 years old. He owned a prebiotics company. He was going to all these trade shows. I met him at a, anti-aging conference. And he said, well, my knees are bad. And 2 orthopedic surgeons told me that I absolutely needed bilateral knee replacement. It's so far gone that that's what you need to do. He said, I really don't want to do it. I want to save it without surgery. I don't want to get artificial knees. The recovery time is long. What if it doesn't go well? So it's scary. So what can we do? And stem cells. He heard about stem cells, and he was willing to give it a chance. I said, great. So let's do the protocol I learned at the time from people who were more experienced than me is that when you're looking at a local issue like the knee, your best chance for healing for something chronic like osteoarthritis is to address both the systemic deficiency and the local deficiency. Because if something has been lingering for years, that means your body just couldn't mount the repair. Because if you hurt something, your body should be able to repair. When you were a little kid, you hurt yourself all the time. I was climbing trees, jumping off fences. You're hurting yourself, but your body is so resilient. First, the tissue is harder to break, but even if you broke it, it fixes itself very fast. But when you're older, a tiny little amount of damage fester and linger. And then you have this chronic pain, and it start get worse and worse because your body could not keep up. So you want to address the systemic capability, right? You need your immune system to repair anything. So why don't we talk with the immune system, get the immune system on board to go to a local area to remove the damaged tissue, right? To gulf up the cells that don't belong, and then reduce the inflammation and send signals so local stem cells can start to repopulate. And the stem cells we're giving to people also can send signals to local stem cells. It's not that they go in there and they start making new tissue themselves. They're really talking to your own tissue and wake your body up. So what happened was that I gave him an IV infusion, and I put some cells into his knees, because both his knees. So the very next day, I said, how are you feeling? Well, no different. But you know what? I slept through the night. I have not been able to sleep through my night for 40 years, because when I was a teenager, my car rolled over and injured my rotator cuff, and it just never fully healed. So every time I roll over in my bed, and the sharp pain would wake me up. But somehow I slept through the night. And guess what? He has slept through the night ever since. So the rotator cuff injury that I didn't even know about got fixed.
Yeah.
And then, of course, his knees over time, within a few months of time, it did really, really well, to the point where he was walking 4 miles until last time I talked with him. I think it was about a year ago, walking 4 miles every day. Barely feels that he said, I don't even think about my knees. I don't even, know I have them, because it doesn't bother me. The only time he felt anything was once in a while when I go downhill, I felt a little twinge. So that's him. He only did 2 sessions.
Okay.
I think 2 sessions 1 year apart. And then this is 9 years later, right?
Amazing.
Yeah. So who gave him the sentence that you have to have artificial joints? So please, orthopedic surgeons, a lot of them are waking up, but a lot of them are not. So don't cut don't right, dismember, don't, preserve their natural function, and don't go into drastic ways that can cause all kinds of problems, unless you absolutely have to. If a person have to, there are cases where people need surgery, but there are a lot of cases that they don't even need it. And then they ended up Yeah. So that was my very first case. You can imagine how it felt. As a psychiatrist, right? Freshly coming out of psychiatry, going into anti-aging medicine. All of a sudden, it's like what your orthopedic surgeons told you what? Okay, well, why don't we try this? I'm not an orthopedic surgeon, but guess what? I fix your knees. And how
Yes.
simple is that? And it is quick and easy. And there's absolutely no side effects, no downtime. And it to me is absolutely remarkable. And that's what's going on. You mentioned I'm and founder of an academy. So I've trained hundreds of doctors. And that's what I see. The moment they start doing the treatment, they're going to be hooked because it feels so good to make a difference like that. So all of us doctors, we're all humans. We want to feel that we have certain power within us, that our efforts, our knowledge is going to make a difference. That's why we're medicine. So that sense of agency, that capability, that's very, very empowering. And I felt doctors are getting less and less empowered. They're stripped of their power because of the system. So they're getting disgruntled, and so many are quitting medicine altogether. Not just that it's not helpful, it's not bringing enough benefit, but also just the system is basically sapping. I just think they make doctors medical slaves. So just be honest. We have become slaves to big pharma industry, right? The pharmaceutical industry. So doctors don't know, they don't want to think about it, but really the income as far as what they're making also is less and less. And they don't know it, but with inflation. So doctors are not doing that great. And the system is utilizing them to make large profit for the large pharmaceutical company. And it's really a sad state of affairs. So a lot of doctors are waking up. But sadly, the doctors who are not waking up, they thought that's the only way of doing medicine. That without doing what they told him or her to do, that there's no other way. And then they quit medicine altogether. So they really should come to talk to me because I'm going to make one of my models, is make medicine fun again, because it's fun. If you can make a big difference using very elegant therapy, and then you see the lives you transform, it's so fun again. So yeah, that's what it should be.
And do you have a training coming up in October? Am I remembering that accurately?
I did do a training in July. Next one is January. Yeah, January 17th, 18th in
2026. Okay, I'll put that link. If I was a doctor, I would be all about this, Dr. Kong. I've learned so much from your content about even myths surrounding stem cell therapy, like more is better, or that it doesn't matter what kind of stem cell that's being either injected into a knee, a shoulder, or received through an IV, that it really does matter. And I believe that you use birth tissue stem cells at Chara Health. And I wonder if you talk to us about why that is and why Chara Health is different, the standards that you have.
Yes. Thank you for asking. So I think it's a very important distinction. Actually, the very first lecture I ever gave at medical conferences was about the different sources of stem cells. It's called ROMSCs Create Equal. Since then, I published that on YouTube. So anyone looking that up, ROMSCs Created Equal, you could go through the 40-minute lecture with me where I talked about the different types of stem cells. A lot of people think, oh, I have to use my own stem cells. That's better. I have news for you. Is actually
devastating. Yeah.
And unfortunately, not only your stem cells are less in quantity and quality, it has much decreased capability to help you heal, but also it has become a little blind when it comes to cancer. So our stem cells, especially mesenchymal stem cells, have the ability to detect cancer and kill off cancer. It secretes a direct ligand to trigger a programmed cell death. But when you start to use very, much older cells, I call it cellular dementia. It's almost like the cells are getting demented. It's like, well, I make everything grow. So I don't care what you are, I'll make you grow. So, unfortunately, you can promote existing cancer. And as we know, having cancer cells is part of human life. We all have emerging cancer cells, but if your immune system is proficient and capable, it will get rid of them. But age is the biggest correlating factor predictor to cancer, because as our age accumulate, our immune system becomes senescent. So they just become old and decrepit. They can't recognize cancer anymore. Then the cancer can just grow, unimpeded, right? And it was even worse if you put in cells that can't recognize cancer, but have the ability to secrete all these growth factors and tell everything to grow. And that's when there's a big problem. So if somebody had a history of cancer or have a family history of cancer, and the person wants to use their own stem cells to do treatment, if they're above age 50, I will not do it. For sure, I will not do it. I just don't think the chance. Yes, you can inform the patient there's an issue, but to me, I see no reason to do that when you have much younger, much more potent and safer cells. That was my whole point of putting together that lecture. It was me trying to figure things out. So I laid out my investigation and my thought process. Okay, so what's going on with all these cells from different sources? Let's compare them directly. Let me find studies to actually compare them across the board, right? Same study, same standard, fat-derived stem cells from a person's own, bone marrow derived from a person's own, and umbilical cord derived from somebody else. Let's see what happens in parameters. It doesn't matter if we're looking at growth factor profile, how anti-inflammatory they are, how much they're able to modulate the immune system, how regenerative they are as far as triggering different tissue regeneration, or how capable they are at making new cells that have more functions. So younger cells have a wide range of capabilities, can become a lot more kinds of cells. So in every aspect, the birth tissue derived cells are just superior. So I just feel like even if they only give 20% edge, so if I could bring healing, if I use a person's own stem cells and that brings about 50% improvement, but I can use umbilical cord stem cells and give them 70%.
Yes.
I personally feel the obligation to give people the 70% instead of 50. So that's just me. I just think it would be misspent energy for me to use a person's own when I know something else is better.
Exactly. As well as 20% of the cells you use at Chara Health or MSC compared to 1% in other places.
The other places, so different companies will use different types of cells. They will use, if they do use birth tissue derived, there are three major camps. The first two camps are bigger. One is cord blood camp. So they only get cells from the cord blood, and that has less than 1% of MSCs. Another camp only use cord tissue, which is mostly Wharton's jelly. And that will have the vast majority are MSCs. But the cell number is very low because you can't get as many MSCs unless you expand them. So if you grow them in tissue, the culture, then you can get a lot of them. But when you grow them to large numbers, you also lose potency. And then the last camp is the amniotic membrane, which also have MSCs, mesenchymal stem cells, but those will have different orientation of differentiation and capabilities. So what I did in my clinic and also at a stem cell company I founded was that I developed a comprehensive formula because I've used cells from all different three types. So I've used them all and they all work to some extent, but nothing works for everything. So again, here's my Chinese background coming together, right? I've seen my mom being healed with this concoction of 15 different herbs. So why would I want to just only use one thing when I know that all these other things also work and they all work a little differently? And we know all these cells in the body, they were all in the human, right? In the baby. So if you bring all of them, and we know in the human body, all the cells work together. So why don't I just put them all together? And there are also, when you put complex things together, there are emerging properties. Just like herbs, sometimes different herbs can come together and they gain new function, gain new capabilities as far as the healing potential. So that's what happened. I brought all three sources and then put them into one product. So that's the 20% being mesenchymal stem cells. And the other 80 are also important. They're not like useless cells. These are also important cells from the cord blood. So all three compartments together also contain different types of MSCs. So people think MSCs, as if MSCs are all the same. First of all, your own MSCs is not going to be as potent as these young birth tissue derived MSCs.
Right.
But even if it's obtained from the birth tissue, the cord blood MSCs are different from the cord tissue MSCs and are different from the amniotic membrane MSCs. They all have different capabilities to go in different directions as far as developing different tissues and help different tissues repair. So I'm bringing them all together because I don't want to miss anything.
Yes.
Right? You want to miss opportunities for healing.
Dr. Kong, what are the indicators of stem cell therapy for paralysis in your experience?
For paralysis, are you talking paralysis caused by stroke or?
Well, I have a friend. His name is Michael, and he fell from a ladder and was paralyzed 20 years ago. And back then, he went to a place to get stem cell therapy, and he spent $150,000, and nothing happened. But after reading your research and learning how a lot of places might give, say, millions of stem cells, and that's not necessarily better than a lower amount that you need, and even the type of stem cell that's given. And his wife wanted me to ask you what you've seen for stem cell therapy for someone paralyzed below the waist, what the indicators are.
This is a spinal cord injury.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's definitely some evidence of stem cell therapy helping with spinal cord injury. It is, also depending on how long ago the injury was, it could be more difficult when the injury is a longer time ago. So I do not inject directly into the spine.
Okay.
There are surgeons that can do that. Of course, the more invasive you are, the more chance of potential problems and adverse reactions. But I think if I approach spinal cord injury, what we'll do is that we will use mannitol infusion to open up the blood-brain barrier first, because most of the cells, they can't cross the blood-brain barrier. The mesenchymal stem cells can cross to some extent, but not all of them. So, but they can cross. However, they do secrete these exosomes, which are signals the cells send out to exert action. And these exosomes can cross the blood-brain barrier very easily. However, for spinal cord injury, I will use a combination of stem cells and exosomes. And then I will open up the blood-brain barrier, allow more cells to get into that section. And then we'll also use laser to focus on that region. So in my clinic, I combine a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. So, again, that's the respect that I show to the complexity of the human body.
Yeah.
It's not just with stem cells and you don't need anything else, you can heal. I mean, that's very naive. You need vitamins and minerals and building blocks for cells. You need,
you have peptide therapy
delivery.
Yes.
Right. And you need energy flow. So what we do is we do ozone therapy first, and then we, open up the blood-brain barrier. We infuse the cells. We also put different peptides in it to help with particular functions that we want to address. So for brain repair, both BPC 157, TB500 are great, but we also use a range of brain peptides like C-Lang, C-Max, cerebrolysine, dihexa. So all these have potential for brain regeneration. So depending on what the patient needs. So for this patient, probably cerebrolysine will be a really good option. That's like the holy grail of brain peptides. Okay. And then we use laser to direct the cells. So we're all light beings. We're to ignore and to not accept the light. Light is essential for life. That again is called arrogance if we don't accept that's essential. So light and photobiomodulation from light is really powerful. And what we can do not only to activate local tissue to elevate the energy level by improving mitochondria function, but the light that we're shining actually can activate adhesion molecules so that when the cells, if they do pass through, they will be more attracted to that area, have more tendency to stay. And then once they're there, then they can do more work, right? You want the cells, more cells to be in a particular area you want them, want help in. So that will be my approach, to get more cells into that region.
And there's someone that you helped that really stood out to me when I started receiving all of this information about a stem cell therapy clinic in Tijuana, Mexico, one in Panama. Joe Rogan's been really big pushing it. And in the middle of all that information coming my way, I was listening to some of your content, and you talked about a gentleman that had gone to the Mexico location, stayed in touch with his cohort, and experienced fatigue, serious fatigue. And you were able to help him immensely by administering less stem cells than what that place did. Will you share about that? Because I think it's important that people know it really matters where you go. And going overseas, I don't think is the best thing when there's something like Chara Health using high quality stem cells in the right amount. I thought that was really important.
Yeah, it is important. I wouldn't have known until this case just showed up in front of me and kind of stared me in my face, because theoretically, I knew what happens when you expand the cells. So all of the overseas clinic, why are they going overseas? Is because there's more lax regulation, right? So, the different countries, there's some countries, especially in the Caribbean and Mexico, they don't have as strict of regulation. So people can expand the cells, put them in tissue culture and in an incubator and grow them into huge numbers, and they can take a portion out and give it to the patient. So it sounds
correct. That's not healthy.
I mean, in theory, if indeed the cells just divide identically into these massive numbers without decreasing in quality, that's great. But then it's not a free lunch. It's not that you can just keep growing the cells with no consequence. Because the problem is, very early in my stem cell career, I went to a lot of stem cell conferences. I really wanted to learn from the scientists. At the time, mostly, there were not that many physicians who were doing stem cell therapy, but there's a lot of research. So the stem cell conferences mostly have scientists who are conducting research. So I learned from them. I remember clearly this one scientist was trying to figure out what happens to the cells when they're being expanded. And he said, unfortunately, when you let the cells divide, the vast majority of the time, the tendency is for the cells to divide asymmetrically. And that's actually a definition of stem cells. Stem cells divide by making a copy of itself, so preserve its own population, and another copy is differentiated, which means gaining function, becoming something a little bit more functional or having some more abilities to do some things. It's not the end organs themselves yet, but it's gaining function. Eventually, it could. So if you are a end organ stem cell, let's say liver with liver stem cell, all it can do is to divide into a copy of self and divide into a liver cell. And that's what it would do. So when you have stem cells, so stem cells have, a lot of variations. So every step of the way, they gain function and lose potential. And that's called differentiation. They differentiate to gain some function.
Okay.
So once you gain some function, you also lose some potential. But the thing is, the stem cell develop into a copy that gains function and another copy of itself. So then if you have a whole soup of stem cells and they keep dividing, if each original cell is dividing into a daughter cell that's gaining function and the copy of itself, and then the one that's a copy of self would divide into a copy of self and a daughter cell that's gaining function, of course, cannot go backward. So it will develop into more daughter cells. And so you can already see at a 4-cell stage, you only have one out of the 4 cells. That's actually a stem cell, right? So then you just keep going and you end up with a big soup of majority of them are daughter cells. But then the people who are giving these stem cells, they don't think that all those are daughter cells. They think, oh, I've got all these stem cells because they all look the same under a microscope. So then they would take a little portion out of this big soup that they just grew and give that to patients, not realizing only a small fraction actually are still the original stem cell. And that's what you're looking for. So that's a problem. And in theory, I knew that's what's happening. Mm-hmm. And also from research, directly comparing cells that have not been expanded versus cells that have been expanded at 10 times the number of the cells that have been expanded. So you think you're giving 10 times the number. So the one research showed that from 100,000 to 1 million. So you're giving 1 million cells. But the result, the clinical efficacy was actually lower than the 100,000 of native cells.
Wow.
Expanded cells. So all these accumulated evidence. So in my heart or my intellect, I understand that's what would happen, but I don't have real world evidence of what happened, because I know a lot of people go overseas and they swear by it and they do really well. And that's great. I think that's wonderful. But I also believe that what we're doing is just a little better. It has an edge and at lower, much lower cells and a lower potential for side effects. Because the moment you start to grow the cells, and they will start to differentiate, which means making markers on the surface of the cells. So gaining function means making new proteins. The proteins do the work. The moment you start making more proteins, those new proteins can interact with your immune system, because these are the proteins from the donor, right? That's not you, unless you're using your own umbilical cord stem cells. So if it's expressing the donor's surface antigen, that can trigger an immune reaction. And that's why there's so much more potential for side effects. Also, when you grow the cells in a culture, the cells they're stressed. So it's not, they can secrete factors that shows that they're stressed. So these inflammatory molecules can trigger this immune response. And that, I think the combination of growing more surface antigens and also secreting more inflammatory molecules, those two together triggered this much, much higher incidence of side effects, which I really see in our clinic. So, and that gentleman you talked about, he's a U.S. veteran, the New York Special Forces, incredible gentleman. Unfortunately, the 9/11 tragedy claimed a lot more lives than just what the people who were harmed on that day, because a lot of his colleagues died in their prime, in their 40s, digging in the pit for 8 months. That's what he did. And that severely damaged his lungs. And when he went to Mexico, because he heard from Joe Rogan, so can't go wrong, right? Joe Rogan brought some light, and that must be the best. So he went to this clinic called CPI, got a lot of cells, and coming with it, a lot of side effects, so much so that he said he was severely fatigued. All the 20 other patients got the same kind of severe fatigue. And it's only 2.5 months later, he realized that he was breathing a little better. But when he came to me, he actually said, I wish I found you earlier, but he came to me after that, and we gave him probably 1/5 the amount of cells that he got compared to what he got in Mexico, and absolutely no side effects. So instead of severe fatigue, he got increased energy, this sharp increased vitality. And then his symptoms started to improve within a few days, instead of waiting for 2.5 months and realizing, I think I'm doing a little better. So that's a drastic difference. And that really showcased the difference between using native unexpanded cells versus something that has been around to large numbers and have lost potency.
It's so powerful, that story.
Yeah. And what's so beautiful is that he might be the first 9/11 victim with lung damage that got reversal. So
that's amazing.
His CT scan showed clearing of all these lesions, and it's absolutely stunning.
It's amazing.
He didn't know how long he was going to live. He was very much, difficult to even just walk up the stairs in his own home. Now he's sprinting. He has been sprinting.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yes.
So Dr. Kong, how can people reach out if they're interested to go through your process to see about receiving stem cells, be it for an illness, injury, or for longevity? What does that process look like?
Very simple. Just call us. So that's 818-356-8232, or email us at info@chara-health.com. So they can look on the website, so Chara, CHARA-health.com. They can also go to my YouTube and get fully educated. They can post a comment and get in touch with me that way, or go to my Instagram, Dr._Joy_Kong, or my personal website, joykongmd.com. And that has everything I'm talking about, including the Academy. If any providers listening, they can go to the Academy website and sign up for our courses. We have online course and we have in-person certification course. We have mentorship program. And then it also talks about the cream that I have created. So
I was going to ask you your skincare line using stem cells. Will you share with us about what makes that so unique?
It's so beautiful because, first of all, I really made a cream for myself because I couldn't find a decent cream. I said, why couldn't I find something that's natural and that's stable and that has all these incredible, because the nature is so rich. The nature has so much to give. So why can't we include all that in a product? It was really hard to find something that's all natural, that doesn't have all these synthetic ingredients that can potentially cause hormone disruption or cellular toxicity. So I realized that the safest way or the easiest way for me to do this is just to do it myself, because I had such a hard time finding it. Not for the lack of trying. I went to the Natural Expo. I bought expensive products, but anyhow, it was difficult. So what I did was then also realize I have, at my fingertips, these stem cells. And I also know about all these peptides. So if I can put together stem cells, peptides, and herbal extracts, the three, that will come together. So it's like the nature's like super gift. So that's what we use. A very simple, is all in one. You just, after cleansing my face, so for the last 5 years, that's the only thing I'm willing to put on my face.
Wow.
Cleanse my face and then put that on. Very simple regimen.
Yes.
And also on my link, if people are interested in my story, they can go to Amazon and just get my book, Tiger of Beijing. It's an interesting read. So it's a very candid story. I want to stress the point where people realize that stem cells is gift from the universe, because we are gifts, right? Each cell, humans cannot create cells. Something that's much more competent than us created the cells. And the cells, really, both you and I came from a single cell. So in that cell contains the DNA that really contains the coding of the secret for healing and for regeneration. This is why I consider stem cell therapy not just a regular medical treatment. I think it's a spiritual act. To me, it's actually, I'm injecting intelligence. And it's and I show a lot of respect. I have a patient hold their cells and put in their thoughts, the thoughts of healing, really bringing it all together. So I don't care if people think that's woo-woo. If you don't accept that thoughts have power, then you're fooling yourself. Then you, hopefully one day, either this lifetime or next lifetime, you will understand. But everything, there's a lot more mystery to life than what the eyes can see.
1000%. I am with you on that, Dr. Kong. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you, Lisa.